Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new international edition of the Xprime Time for Business show, a show that is produced by Xprime and powered by Euroins, and a show that intends to find out by visiting several insurance markets in our regions how all these markets have coped with the COVID crisis, and mostly what are the perspectives, what are the strategies for the future. We have already met the markets of Poland, Croatia, and Slovenia, of course, in a virtual manner. And we will travel also in other CE countries, as well as in Turkey and Russia in the future. And to stay tuned with all the novelties, of course, I am recommending kindly you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to follow our LinkedIn pages, who will keep you informed. Today, focus on the Georgian insurance market. Of course, I need to present myself. I'm Daniela Ghețu. I'm editorial director of Xprime Publications. And as a host, I'm pleased to welcome you and also to welcome our guests. So in our studio, in our virtual studio today, there are Mr. Shvili, chairman of the Insurance State Supervision Service of Georgia. Welcome, David. Mr. Devi KHECHINASHVILI, president of the Georgian Insurance Association. Welcome to you too. And two representatives of the market players, Mr. Giorgi BARATASHVILI, general manager of Aldagi, and Mr. Michael JAPARIDZE, CEO of RD Insurance. With them all together, I hope we will have a clear image of what is the Georgian market today and what are the challenges, also the opportunities, and mostly what we can expect from the future. But first of all, I will ask you to try to see a little bit how is the general economic situation in your country. How much was the economy affected by the COVID crisis? As far as I can understand, in a timeline manner speaking, the crisis has started a little bit later than in Europe, let's say in Eastern Europe. But of course, the insurance industry is not an island, is not isolated by the rest of the economy. And so the impact it's also translating in this area. Mr. ONOPRISHVILI, could you help us with a general picture of the Georgian economy and the state of the insurance industry in this context?
With pleasure. Thank you very much, Daniela, for inviting me and our business representatives for this interesting show presentation. I would like to say how it's happened in Georgia, what's happened actually regarding to economy. Insurance is not an island compared to other businesses, and it's also influenced like the same way the Georgia is also not an island in the world. Unfortunately, it touched like every country in the world. Georgia experienced, of course, serious effects on the COVID issues. First of all, it was more major impact on Georgia's economy, while the health impact on the pandemic has been well contained, actually, compared to other countries. The cases in March, April, May, June, totally till almost mid-August, end of August, total cases were about up to 2,000 cases during all these 6 months. At the same time, Georgian government and our medics and people who are involved to prevent pandemic spread in the countries, they had several measures, but of course it's affected our economy. Figures I can share, it's we expecting now contract of GDP growth will be negative this year. latest forecast, it will be like a minus 5.5%. Of course, compared to maybe some other countries, it's better because some countries we heard and we know that forecast is even worse, double and more. But still, we are talking now about Georgia, and it's absolutely, and this figure show that the trade is diminished. You know, Georgian and revenue from trade, Georgian economy quite dependent on the tourism, and here is absolutely almost to zero after starting from the March 2020 till today, almost no tourists because of this pandemic situation. And of course, the revenue, it's come to zero. And for many people, it was maybe almost only one source of surviving from tourism business, hospitality business, hotels, all related infrastructure involved people. And unemployment also definitely became higher, relatively higher. But the government also introduced several measures of social assistance, different measures. And so far, so good. Let's say we are balancing the situation. Certain deterioration, the exchange rate as well here. But as a summarize, I can say the situation under control. And actually, after first wave, which nobody really knew how to react on this pandemic or what will be influence to different sectors. Now we feel more comfortable, if we can say this word, because we know what's happening. People, I mean, doctors also became more understanding how to deal with the cases. And now if we have some areas, something bigger spread, today we have like a 250, 300 cases per day during this September, but still nobody is really closing the economy. And if something happening like in region Ajara, for example, it's like a targeted cases where something is closing there, either schools or special areas, but the economy now is open as much as possible. Of course, now I would like to move towards the insurance sector, because definitely we are talking now insurance business and how the pandemic situation and the economy now affected to Georgian insurance sector. I would like to share with you the screen.
Until you are sharing, one. Yes, the screen.
Yes, 1 second.
Correct that the environment it's a little bit tough for insurers.
Yes, you can see, I think, right? Insurance market overview. Yeah. Here you can see the Georgian insurance market still on positive track after 8 months. You can see the first table here. It's slightly higher than 8 months gross written premiums than it was last year, 8 months. And the next figure shows August 2019 with August 2020. We can see decline. Actually, month of August became first month in this year when month-over-month comparison shows a decline. All previous July over July, June over June, 2020 to 1919 was increased. It's the first time now we see the diminishing month-over-month in August such a result. And some other tables consider slighter increase in net profit during 8 months this year and last year. You can see here the net profit in August. It's almost same like it was last year and this year. Insurance results and insurance result in August. and assets partially increased. So we can say that Georgian market, and we forecasting that taking the trend what currently exists by end of the year, if nothing significant effects will be, and it will continue like its current trend, we consider this the best case scenario will be if it will be repeatance of the last year results. I mean, in gross written premium and in profit, etc. Like a year, like a last year, but more expectedly as a result, we are expecting it will be less worse year than 2019. I mean, 2020 will be worse almost in every direction. And here is a charts. You can see that, for example, monthly gross written premiums. A red line is 2019 and the blue 2020. So here is almost the same, but then in August it's diminished, as I mentioned. And you can see medical and health. It's also should be interesting here. Health partially increased in May, June, because it's also interesting how it's happened in insurance because of it was lockdown. The cities, cars not moving, and people had a yearly based taken insurance on health, but actually the losses were not too much for medical because people cannot go to doctors, cannot, only very specific cases. Therefore, here is a from a medical direction, written premium is a bit even higher. Here is an auto casco situation. Of course, cars not moving, and the situation you can see how is, and the people not going to buy spring any kind of casco, much casco as it was like last year. Here's a in property situation, also diminishing in August. You know, in this area, usually it's a yearly contracts, and economy was very slow down, and the cases of losses are also less. And this is the last one. I did not want really to take much time. My colleagues also should speak here, and you can see very clearly here that travel situation. Last year, written premiums, you can see the red line so high and almost nothing starting from March, diminishing April, and almost nothing even in July, August, when is the most important months for tourism and foreign also in this area to get premiums, revenue, and no tourists in Georgia. So, and here is this one, it's a border TPL. As you know, we are expecting that TPL, third-party liability, will be introduced. It's already in the parliament, the law, and will be introduction with highest probability next year, hopefully in spring. But we already introduced bordered, so-called border TPL. We did it like 2 years ago. When foreign cars enter it in Georgia, they must buy third-party liability insurer policy. And you can see, because tourists not coming, and you can see this red line, how it was last year increasing. And this year, it's almost 30% of the last year. And all companies, they have a pool actually in this area, and they're sharing the revenue in the as a pool principle. And here is we expect at least 20 million losses 2022 out of 34, 35 of the last year. So it's less, almost 30%. So this is a general overview situation of insurance market and insurance situation in Georgia from our side. And relatively, I must say, relatively maybe better situations than maybe some other sectors of Georgian economy. But of course, it's not an excuse for the people and for the businesses working in this area. For them, it's a really hard year. And they already from March worked in the distance, I mean, through distance and remotely all this time. Currently, a little bit easier was summer, but still, because some increase in the cases of COVID-19, they still, again, now returning this remotely working situation.
It's clear that the environment is not very friendly for insurance operating on all markets, in part because the economy itself is not going well and companies and corporate clients have difficulties, in part because the purchasing power of the population is also affected. But let's hear from a representative of the market players. How did, in fact, insurers felt this crisis? Because so far, looking at the figures, except for August, as you have shown, the trend remained positive, mainly positive, and this make me think that maybe it's about the traditional delay between the economic crisis and the impact, the visible impact on the insurance industry. What are your expectations and how did you cope until now with the situation? Mr. KHECHINASHVILI, can you help us with the point of view?
I'll try to do so. First of all, thank you very much to organizing this very interesting meeting. I hope the audience is quite broad because despite this market is small, we have a lot of chances and perspective for the future because everything good is in the future, depending on the market. Now, Mr. ONOPRISHVILI made a very well thought presentation, and really, if you look cumulative to what happens within 6 months, yes, we have had no negative results, but if we go inside deeper, we have to see that the first 2 months of this year, they are very positive, unusually positive, up to 30% growth in premium. And this growth in premium, that is unusual for that period of time, normally for this season. And this period, and that we lost, of course, within this 6 months period. We are now somehow around, I talk about 6 months because clear figures of 9 months we will have in one. There are a lot of things that are already collected in information, but also it will be corrected. What we see clearly is that for sure, there was a period when COVID was and all measures of COVID were very active. Well, we have the significant drop in pure loss ratios, especially in motor and in medical also, which is 40% of our business. Therefore, the result of 6 months is also positive. Now we are looking for what will happen, what will be shown in as a result of the third quarter. And we see that in the third quarter, losses are increasing. And also the main story is what will happen with the economy. A good story for our business is, it is not a good story general, but the biggest part of our business is corporate. And this corporate business was able, mostly except of tourist industry, direct related business, to have a stable situation also. And therefore our premium incomes were not reduced significantly. That is important. Retail suffered for sure. But at the same time, in the corporate business, there is a significant part of government organizations and risks. These are also stable because they are budget lines were not cut it and so on. So the other story is very interesting that most of the corporate clients even sending their staff to unpaid leaves kept health insurances. So in this COVID situation, health insurance was understood as a very important factor, and the premium was also significantly kept. So we have a situation of really social responsibility that is my understanding how it is in reality to understand of corporate structures. Mostly 6 months positive. We will see what will happen in the third quarter. It will be very interesting to understand how the tendencies are developing. And of course, all is depending on how our economy as a whole will overcome the COVID crisis. We are, as you said at the beginning, not isolated from the economy.
So from an operational point of view, do you think that this crisis changed something in the market? Are you operating in a different manner? It encouraged some changes that were,
I think the companies will tell you about it. Many things inside changed. For example, my understanding is that health operation is significantly different. Claims management is different and so on. So I think that line by line, we have already changes. We have lost a significant part of a very profitable business lines that is connected with tourism. So we are now in a situation where we have to operate more and more efficient. That is also not bad in that regard. So what we know is that if the economy will not suffer very significantly in the future, then I think we will have a quite positive result. Reduction or growth in general figures in one story. But the other story is at the moment, we keeping our staffing, we are keeping our clients, we are mostly keeping our clients. Unfortunately, in retail, the situation is worsening, and everything will develop on the economy, and everything will develop on how in future measures, also from the government side, to stimulate insurance relations, insurance business will be put in place. For example, Mr. Onoprishvili was telling that we have already 3 years mandatory MTPL on the border for not in Georgia registered cars, but we missed the opportunity to come up with a local TPL. And this local TPL is for the future, and that is a significant part of, I think we have now first interesting steps in terms of COVID management in health. We have the first products also mandatorily requested by the government for students coming in to Georgia with COVID cover. And these COVID covers, we are expecting that it will have a much bigger scale in the future. So there are interesting trends in what will happen. So we have to see third quarter, fourth quarter, economy, and also measures to push up insurance business.
Speaking about market figures and the image changing from a quarter to another, please allow me just a couple of seconds of auto promo, let's say so. I would like to remind you that our portal, xprim.com, is a constant source of statistical information and news from all the countries in all the insurance markets in the CEE and the CIS space, as well as Turkey and the Southern Europe. And I warmly invite you to visit it and read it. And this being said, I would come back to your market and ask my colleagues to show us a slide that I have prepared as introduction to my next question, because the Georgian market has a peculiar structure, is as far as I am concerned, the only market with such a high share of health insurance in the market portfolio, which probably in times like this is an important thing. And this is why I would like to hear, as you can see in the graph, there's almost half of the insurance business in your country is coming from health insurance. So given the special times, the health crisis that we are living through these days, I would like to find out from a market player how, if this situation has posed some special problems, has raised some special difficulties or challenges, and how did you cope with them? Mr. Japaridze, could you help us? I know that your company has a significant activity on the health insurance field. So what is your opinion on that?
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you again for having me, for having us. And it's very inspiring again that you are still continuing to update us about all these events and still helping to share the ideas. The health insurance itself is, as you mentioned, is very important for Georgian insurance market. And it's like it has predates, I would say, why it is so popular, because I mean, years ago it was mostly managed by private insurance companies. The state healthcare plans was managed by private insurers, so it helped a lot to publicize the private insurance market. And when now most of the universal healthcare system is managed by state, the private part of it was preserved and even increased over here, because there is the trend shows that there is place for private insurance and the place for the overall general services provided by the states for the better safety nets, I would say, general services. So during this period, of course, coronavirus was a challenge for Georgian insurance market and for the participants as well. There is no doubt about that. And as Devi mentioned, mostly tourism sector, hospitality sector was affected, very much affected, I would say. But as Devi mentioned, it was really good to see that companies who lay off, at least temporarily, the staff, they preserved health insurance as the benefit for them to keep link with them, to have some touch with them. So it was huge benefit for them. Idea is that as we see now currently, it is health is a major issue in general all over the world. So if companies may have some savings in terms of property insurance maybe, or in terms of liability lines, but health insurance is important. It doesn't matter whether it's crisis or not, you still have to be covered, or you still at least still have to have medicines to buy, or some surgery to take, or something like that. So you only think that you can hedge all these health expenses is via health insurance. So as you know, in Georgia and in many countries, but mostly in Georgia, health insurance is not really that insurance. It's like managing the fund. It's like we are funding the costs of the healthcare services what the public needs, and that's the whole story of the health insurance in Georgia. So mostly what we are doing now, the biggest challenge I would say, other than COVID, is that to manage with the inflation. Because if inflation won't be in check and prices will go rapidly, this will put huge constraint on the pricing of the health insurance. Because when we price the health insurance, we price it once per year, right? So the insured individual or company pays the same amount during whole year. But there are instances where prices or medicine or surgery or some outpatient care increases 3, 4, or 5 times during the year. So during the year, so this is a huge problem, because you cannot have flexible navigation. You cannot navigate in this area, in your environment, and this is very tough. We are doing our best to navigate in these circumstances, and well, we'll see what will be the outcome. Currently, what we are doing, other than the economic crisis of delivered by COVID, is the problem of the rising prices. And this is what I would say with the same magnitude as the COVID effects. I would say to have the flexible and stable prices, and if it goes up, then it will put huge pressure, I would say, because in health insurance, margins, if any, is razor thin. It's non-existent almost, and there is no buffer for insurance companies in health insurance product to have like some reserves to manipulate. It's razor thin, if ever. So
the increasing cost of the medical treatments, it's only because of the higher inflations due to the current crisis, or is a trend a part of this inflation aspect? Because all over the world, insurance are seeing that medical treatment costs are increasing step by step every year because of new techniques, new medicines, more expensive, etc., etc. Are these things adding one to another, or it's just related to the current crisis and the inflation trends?
No, you're correct. Actually, these small things add up. This is not one issue. This is small things: the crisis, economic crisis, the inflation, some other circumstances. This is add up. But if we want to underline what is the major two issues, I would say these two issues. There is also a problem that all around the world, the countries are injecting now liquidity to the system, and Fed is injecting liquidity. ECB is injecting liquidity in the system because there is no liquidity. There is no money velocity in the system. So the central banks try to increase this velocity, like is in Georgia. So when you try to increase the liquidity to spend for the people to have to spend the money, you may end up with the inflation. It is like always the case. But now, what is the idea that all around the world and even in Georgia, people are trying not to spend as much as they did previously. So this takes down the M2 velocity. Lower than it was previously, and we don't know when public perception will change, for instance, and when they think that because of the vaccine or because of the cure or whatever, that now it's good times again. What will be the stored economy? How this will be released? We don't know. Currently, what we see is that the prices are slowly and gradually increasing. Last year, for instance, from 4 to 7% was increased prices in medicine. This is I'm not talking about the inflation in like double digits. No, because health insurance is rather thin margin. It's tiny, 2 or 3% overall inflation. It counts a lot. It counts a lot. It's not that it's not. It's small. 2 or 3% is big issue in terms of overall market. This is the whole thing.
Well, the changing behavior of the customers in how they are spending their money could be also an issue for many other business lines than health insurance. I think it's currently a common thing to see that people have a decreasing appetite for buying insurance because in general, they have a lower purchasing power. What would you say about the other business lines? Because until the end of the first half of the year, you still have seen positive trends on most of the other lines, except for border insurance, maybe, or other very less important business lines. What about the main PNC business lines? I would like to ask Mr. Baratashvili to help us, because I know Aldagi is a big player and on a very diversified portfolio. So you have an experience in most of the others, property and casualty lines.
Thanks, Daniela, for the question, and thanks to Extreme for the event. And it's really nice to have an update on insurance for the other players in the world from Georgia. So yeah, talking about the PNC market, I would say that the 6 months, even though the 6 months is positive, and especially if you look at the breakdown of the months, we can see that January and February were the most highest generating premium months in the last 6 months. Then we have in March we went into the COVID deep down, and the lockdown has started. So I would say that the main increase and the main positive trends in the PNC lines were two factors. I mean, it was the lockdown when the cars did not move all around the country, and the claims went down. So that's the one reason, and the other reason is actually the revaluation of the assets and the devaluation of the local currency, because mainly the premiums are stated in US dollars and the payments are done in lari. So the main increase of the revenues of the gross written premiums are mainly from the revaluation and of the income. I mean the unearned premiums. As we know that all insurance, we all insurance companies have the unearned premiums reserve that is calculated on a monthly basis and recalculated. So we know that as soon as the COVID pandemic started in the country, the lari went into diving. So as the local currency dived and the devaluation started, of course, we recalculated, all insurance companies recalculated the unearned premiums, and the increase mainly is, I would say, is due to the revaluation. The decrease of the losses and the increase of the also the increase of the profitability is caused due to those main factors. Again, to the increase of the gross written premium and other assets that were also revaluated, and mainly of the health insurance, as my colleague Mr. Japaridze has mentioned, that the utilization was close to zero in the 2 months. The surgeries were closed. I mean, if the emergency, health insurance, if it wasn't an emergency surgery, hospitals were not allowed to make the surgery. And on the other hand, we had a lockdown in the country where the cars did not move. So if we say the main line, the business-driven line, PNC is motor insurance, which we could see that it's the second biggest or third biggest after the health insurance. So we can see that the most claims come from the motor insurance. So I would say that the 6 months is not sustainable, even though it's good that we see it on paper, but it's not sustainable, I would say. We see the trend even in August, that the expectations are getting worse and the premiums generated are going down, and the health and the claims in health insurance and the motor insurance are going back to the previous metrics. So my expectations are not so positive, I would say, and I would say that the third quarter and the fourth quarter will be quite tough. The government did a great job in the first 6 months with fighting of the COVID, but you know that after the lockdown, we had an open, especially in Achara, we had an open tourism for the local open tourism, and there were a lot of people. So we are experiencing right now quite an increase in the amount of the infected, unfortunately, and the expectations of the people is not so good, I would say, for the coming months till the end of the year. And especially right now, as Devi also has mentioned, Mr. KHECHINASHVILI, that the 2 months, I mean, the first half was the bad expectations were coming mainly from the retail, and now the trend observed is coming mainly from the corporates. I'm not talking about the health insurance. I'm talking about the PNC lines, that the liquidity is going down of the corporates because their incomes has gone down. And we all know that Other than the all over the world, other than the mandatory lines, the companies, whenever the crisis is here, the companies are trying to cut off the cost for the insurance because it's something that companies can live without the voluntary insurance lines. So yesterday I had a meeting with our corporate team, and even though we are doing good in the retail, I would say, because probably the segments that we're insuring are more or less not affected in terms of the income, because we know that the penetration is quite low in the insurance in Georgia. Like, let's say that 10% of the whole fleet is insured, and more or less those people still have the money and they're insuring their cars. But right now we are moving in, and mainly who had cut off the costs in the first 6 months were the people that were mainly involved in tourism, in transportation of the tourists, and that was already cut off. Those people are not insuring anymore, and we had a drop in tourism and in the hospitality business. Right now, what we are observing is that more or less the corporates are having trouble in the second half of the year with the premium payments, and they're already asking for the premium decreases, for the discounts, or for postponing the premium payment, or for the cancellations, unfortunately. I would say that the insurance industry will be having quite a tough time in the third and fourth quarter. That's my overview of 2020 second half.
So we could say that in a way or another, a tough part of the crisis is just now arriving somehow, a little bit delayed as compared with the moment of the lockdown and the start of the health crisis. Of course, the insurance are doing their best to with this situation, as I have seen in other countries too. Many of them have shown understanding for the difficulties of their customers, accepting delayed payments, etc., etc. But in the end, I think there is also important that the market authority has to come with some measures to support this business if possible. And this is why I would like to ask Mr. ONOPRISHVILI, from his point of view as the top representative of the market authority, what can you do to help insurers cope with the situation and maintain the sustainability and the financial safety of the market?
Yes, it was, of course, for us also challenge how to act, what to do. Companies and association also had several requests, and as active regulatory body, despite being in remote regime, we, starting from early spring, we were in very active communication with the insurers, and as well as our colleagues from them, local and foreign relevant institutions. And first of all, it was for us also was highest importance to understand the challenges related to COVID, both locally and globally, what's going on. We have studied the initial reports on the impact on the global economy, local economy, and of course, in general, and insurance industry particularly. And for immediate move was to protect the policyholders, which were affected immediately by the lockdown. And in March, we issued an official paper of our recommendations on the distance services, strengthening infrastructures to meet distance service requirements, protect the policyholders with a higher risk, because some people addressing us how to, because it's not easy to even touch the companies at the beginning because it was lockdown, and then companies very also following our recommendations, and themselves also they had initiatives how to not to lose contact with policyholders in many cases. It was some difficulties in certain areas of this, and then we introduced some measures which I think it was helped the companies. The service and insurance sector mutually agreed on the suggestions to extend the premium payment schedules and some cases to suspend the insurance coverage for a period of lockdown. They have many such kind of addresses on Casco and some other directions of the industry. Then we decided, it was July, when we made a change in the supervisory capital requirement, allowing insurers without any risk of deteriorating the financial position to remove deferred commission expenses from the discounted assets. And such step helped them to release significant part of their financial resources and gives them more financial flexibility. Just recently, I can say that 2 days ago, I signed the order that it was the expected, and it was an order that end of the year increase minimum capital for all the companies from 4.2 million lari to 7.2 million, like 3 million lari more. It's almost $1 million or almost 1 million euro, a bit less million euro dollar increase for each company. And we discussed ourselves, we have communication a few times regarding this issue with the companies, and finally we made such decision supporting, and this supports the smaller market players, definitely not big ones, to reallocate their resources in order to face current challenges and give more flexibility to their financial resources. And I think even for bigger ones also maybe was a certain way helpful this step, but for medium and smaller ones definitely was really important. And we also took into account definitely first of all the COVID situation, but also because market not raise so much, and no new TPL, local TPL law was passed so far. Actually, risks are remained more or less the same, and we actually did such step, and I think the companies, several companies are happy for it, at least. And they can comment themselves about this. Some of them maybe, there were a few companies, they did not want much to do this, but okay, but we are the supervisors, and we, I think we we did a proper step, and better than to keep increase, just to delay it for just 1 year.
We can only hope it will work everything for the good. I would like to invite you in a couple of seconds to talk a little bit also about customers and the market perspectives, because we are getting closer to the end of this meeting. Before that, please allow me just a few seconds to thank to our sponsor. Euroins is a part of the Eurohold group, an entity which is becoming more and more important at the regional level in the last years. And I think even in your market, it's rather a new entry, let's say, as compared with other companies, but it has big chances to gain more and more relevance with every year that it passes. That being said, I would like to invite you to come to the customer, the king of the business, because this period has accelerated in many markets some changes also in the customers' behaviors. There, the expectations are changing. People are more attentive to the way they are spending their money, how much money, what coverage they get for that price. The young generations expect to receive services, insurance services at the level they're receiving online services from, I don't know, travel agencies or shopping malls or other entities. Did you observe such trends in your market? Are customers actually changing their expectations towards the insurance industry? I would ask the direct players in the market to answer us. Mr. Baratashvili, would you say a
Yeah,
yes or a no?
I would say that it's not a new thing. I would say that the customer has changed over last few years, and we also has positioned ourselves as a company that we want to be more customer centric. For the years, the insurance industry all over the world has been product driven. Now we need to change to a customer driven. We need to move from a payer to a partner. That's our main strategy. That's what we said 2 years ago. The modern customer does not want a payer anymore. So the insurers all over the world were the payers. That era has ended. We need to become a partners to our customers because they request much more than paying a claim. They want somebody to take care of their problems. So we want them, they want us to be their problem solvers. And that's what we did 2 years ago when we announced our new strategy, Altagi, and we are doing our best that we are, of course, together with evaluated services. Our customers, especially in the retail, they want, for instance, if their house catches a fire or they get a flooding, they don't want just a payment. They don't want somebody to come and count their claim and transfer on their account. They want somebody to fix it. So they don't care who fixes, how it's fixed. They just want the problem to be resolved. So that's what we're doing for the last 2 years, and our strategy is to become a partner. And we have done a lot of things so that mostly all of our wordings have been refurbished and rewritten, and especially I'm talking about the retail products. And of course, we are investing in digital. A lot of money has been invested there, and I would say that especially in the pandemic time, Aldagi was the only company to launch a blockchain technology. So a contract could be signed via a blockchain using a blockchain technology without the contact. And of course, the pandemic, the corona helped us, of course, to make whole company digital. That's the benefit, I would say. And we transferred all of our 500 employees in 1 week on a distance mode of working, and we were able to sign a contract, all contracts. I'm saying not only third-party liabilities, the health insurance. I mean, not the health, but casco insurance, motor insurance, via digital, and our customers knew that their contract would be somewhere on the blockchain. It was really unique that our digital team and development team did those changes. So, of course, what the positive thing was the digitalization of more and more of the company. And of course, today's customers, they don't want just an insurer. They want the partners.
Mr. Japaridze, would you confirm?
Yes, I would agree with Mr. Baratashvili's approach, and there were some trends, of course. When insurance industry was even younger, I would say it is still younger. I mean, we are barely up from zero. I mean, we have a lot to go still. But I mean, 5 to 10 years ago, it was the demands in terms of insurance services or medical services or any other service, whatever it is, it was still lower because country was still growing and getting used to the market services. But when the country grows, economy grows, still they want coating, not just product. When you go to the restaurant, yeah, you may find the dish very good, but you need the dressing. So all these clients, what we have in our sector and in other sectors, they are now paying attention not to the core product, but on the dressings. What sort of service you have, what sort of feedback you said, how polite.
So the full experience.
Yes, of course, how polite you are and so forth. One good thing is that mostly insurance companies invested some more, some less in technologies, and it helped a lot. When crisis hit, more or less insurance companies were ready to take on these services, and there were not much major disruptions in terms of services. Yes, many companies were advanced in this case. Some of them a bit lagging, but still more or less system was pretty resilient, I would say. But this accelerated even more investments in digital. So in terms of claims payment or online sales of the insurance contracts and so forth, there were lots of initiatives, and this is very good because this helps customer experience to get cover and to get paid. So this is very important, and I would say this trend will continue for sure. This is not going away; it will stay, and also we have to count that new generation is coming, and this new generation is more tech savvy than the previous generation. So if we have some segments that still want to come in the office and get hands on cash, the younger generation, they won't require that. So I think this trend will stay, and it's very interesting how the system will develop. Still, as I said, we are anticipating to have a market that is 3- or 4-fold bigger than it is now. So we are preparing for that, and I would say in terms of competition, we have pretty steep competition and very tough competition, and this helps again the customer experience, and we are looking towards these developments, I would say. And also I want to mention what Mr. David mentioned, that the supervision services approach was also very adequate, I would say. They initiated and they used the tools what they had to support the market. This is very important to mention, because all these efforts from the local authorities to the companies, to the association, this will help market to stay resilient and to deliver the value. This is the whole thing.
Definitely the technical advancement is something that gained a lot of speed during this crisis, forced by the situation. And it presents a lot of opportunities. It answers to a lot of needs of the new generation of consumers. But I think that it also brings some new risks on the table, because exposure, especially in this context when many are working from home, and there is a lot of communication between people on the web, somehow on the internet. The exposure to the cyber risk is increasing, and maybe other risks too. And in the end of our meeting, I would like to invite you all to share with us what is your opinion on the market perspectives, and what are your expectations for the coming months exactly in this framework. Are there new risks developing? What about the way that you can cope with this addition of the traditional risks, because they are not stopping to exist because of COVID and the current situation? Shortly, what do you expect for the forthcoming months, let's say until year end, on the first part of 2021? I would start with Mr. KHECHINASHVILI. Maybe you have a point of view from the entire market as an association.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that we have to understand very well and observe very well what's happening on the market in terms of customer interest and so on. Also looking at figures from the customer protection unit of the supervisory authority and from the mediation service, which is very active in Georgia. And the good story is that we see there is no growth of claims despite a more complicated situation. So the market and the relations and the business is preparing in a good shape. That is one story. The other story is, for sure, digitalization brings risks, especially it is quite complicated when it goes up to health insurance and claims management and so on in health insurance, which is also becoming more and more digital. And that is also a push. And we are also following it, all these developments, very carefully. What for the future, as I told, all the good things in market development in Georgia are in future. We are expecting in future, not until the end of the year, but next year, the principal story with the MTPL, local MTPL role. We think that we have already developed some products with COVID coverages, which need to be put to the market also with the participation of the government. And I think it will come up to this story. So many other things will happen. And the main issue for me personally and how I see it is how to support market growth. That is the main, because all other risks exist, and these will be coped. I'm sure there are a lot of small concrete problems, how to deal with delayed premiums and so on, but that is done. The main story is how to ensure market growth, new lines of business, traditional, which are absent in Georgia, and also mandatory coverages.
Okay. Do your association members agree with you, Mr. Baratashvili? What would you say about the perspectives?
Firstly, of course, I would like to thank our supervisor, Mr. David, for the actions he took. It was really, really good from his side. I am saying the commission part and the supervisory equity part. Because even though we have much more equity than the minimum requirement, but it was, I would say, that a good in terms of the economy also, because to feed the lari on the account is not feasible at this point when we have some economical problems in the country. It's better to be in the economy. That's very good part. In terms of the 3 months, I would say that of course it's really challenging for the whole industry to keep the employees. Our first challenge, of course, is to keep our experienced staff. We've been positioning as one of the stable companies on the market for the last 30 years in Georgia. And of course, my personal goal is to keep all my employees. That's my personal goal for the company and for my employees. Because unfortunately in Georgia, we don't have any school where a person can learn insurance. And I was looking at the data last time, and it was 5,500 people who we taught insurance in the country, Aldagi. So that's quite a figure. In terms of the whole market, I would say, of course, is that support of our clients, and the main issue will be to retain the revenue. To retain not the revenue, but gross written premium. For the years we were looking at the revenue, this year very, very important is the gross written premium. So I would recommend all the market players, of course, to be in a real close cooperation with the customers, to be maximum flexible. So if we together with our customers will overcome the year of 2020, I'm sure that 2021 will be better. The projections of the economy are much better of the country also, and in terms of also of the GDP. Because we all know that in retail, the insurance growth is connected with the GDP growth. So this year is the maintenance of the claims, maintenance of the gross written premium, regulation of the claims and the liquidity of the insurance companies, and also with the help of the whatever the supervisor could do, they did it. That's the one part. And of course, the other part is the maintenance of the client. Because for the years, we've been working to bring down the knowledge of the insurance to the clients, and for them to understand that the insurance is one of the main tools how they can manage the risks. So we don't want to lose that gap. That contact. We don't want to give the gap to come back. So that's the main challenge for 2020, and for 2021, of course, is the challenge for local third-party liability. I would say it will boost the market and will be another. we had a conference on that part last year.
Yeah, we will come back to the main issue
Hope to
of
see
the
you for
MTPL.
next year with the third-party liability in force, and we will make a perfect conference.
Okay, maybe we will see another conference live, face-to-face next year. Hopefully, the situation will be better. If not, we will try to do it in online, as everybody. We don't have many choices in this area. Mr. Japaridze, from your point of view, what would be, let's say, the priority?
Priority, I would agree with Giorgi. The priority is to maintain the existing positions which we have currently. I think for all the participants, it will be the same, because we have to face the reality that there were industries that we are like affected 20 to 30%, 50%, and some of them 100%. So we are more or less, I mean, have to be happy, I would say, that we are not that much affected. But eventually, these ripple effects are going to having effects, as it was already mentioned. And so we have to do our best to preserve the companies intact, at least with minimal damage and with minimal losses what we can incur during this year. And if we do this, I think this, again, I would say that this will increase the resilience of the system for the next years to come and for the next mandatory lines to come. Because major issue for all the employers, I would say, is to preserve the staff, because lots of efforts and lots of time and investment and emotional also stage goes in there. So we're growing and nourishing our staff, and we have to preserve them for sure. And being the responsible player on the economy on this part is also very important. If you do our job properly, then some part of it, of the economy, will be preserved. And I think this is the most important issue, because the fourth quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year will be very important. What's this second wave or this ripple effects will have effect, what sort of effects they will be. So we're watching to this and doing our best to preserve all these issues.
So far I understand that preserving the market achievements is one point. Yeah. Remaining close to the customers and employees is the second one. Yeah. And we don't hear you any longer, Michael. And of course, keeping an open path for the future growth remains a target. What would be the perspectives and the priorities from the market authority point of view? And with this, we will end our discussions. Mr. ONOPRISHVILI, please give us your point of view.
It's difficult, definitely, to forecast how COVID will behave, but listening to doctors and specialists and experts in this area, it should be easy situation in the spring, and many things depends, and this pressure on the economy definitely depends how they behave this COVID-19 and about vaccine. There are several kind of indicators which should improve the situation. We hope actually that, and the forecast for Georgian economy is just to recover, and next year to reach the level of 2019, I mean, to overcome this -5 GDP negative growth and have the growth for 5% next year. If it's the case and scenario will be like this, it means that, and if we add that this MTPL law will be passed next year, so market definitely more wider, revenue and return premium should be higher. Same time, to just mention, it's important that we are working, we don't have life insurance as per se, as in Western countries. So we are working with the World Bank now. We started already how to start this business in Georgia. It takes time, but we already on our way. And we are working now seriously on medical liability and construction liability laws, hopefully maybe past next year. So I think from all this point, market should have good perspective starting from the next year. And so far, even having no times, all 18 companies are survived. They have normal solvency situation, and we're hoping that, and market competition is really tight, and they're introducing new insurance products every quarterly. We are hearing 1, 2, or 3 companies introducing some new products in health or some other directions of the insurer business. So I think we have good prospective, Georgia, in the wall to develop, and we also hope the investments also will be coming after COVID situation in Georgia, and especially in the insurance business.
Well, in this positive note, I hope that next time we will meet together, we will have good news for everybody, and maybe the general context will be more friendly for everybody's business. Until then, I would like to thank you all once again for your participation in this meeting. Also, thank our sponsor, Euroins, once again for everybody. And I want to remind all our viewers that it would be a good idea to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that they can keep in touch with all the novelties that we are producing quite often. And that being said, thank you everyone once again, and goodbye. See you next time, maybe in Georgia.
Thank you very much.
We in Georgia next time.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Oh, ca să zic așa,